Hi everyone, it's Alan with 𝘴𝘊𝗚𝗏. Welcome back to another new video. Today's video is a highly requested one. I'm going to be showing you how I sand my concrete vessels. And I want to take a moment to thank 𝘴𝘶𝘚 for sponsoring today's video. If you aren't familiar with 𝘴𝘶𝘚, they are the world's largest supplier for elevated and innovative candle making supplies. Now, you all know that I love a lot of their wood wicks, particularly the .04 series, and I also love a lot of their fragrance oils, and we're going to be using one of my favorites later on in today's video. You can use my affiliate code 𝘴𝘊𝗚𝗏10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Once again, thanks to 𝘴𝘶𝘚 for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back into it. So I actually do this with a pottery wheel. I'll have it linked below. It's a really inexpensive one. And this sanding disc that I got from Diamond Core Tools, I'll have it linked below as well. But basically, I mount the disc on the pottery wheel and I use my foot like this to control the speed. Now, I'm just going to be getting the wheel wet with some distilled water. Part of why I like this method, actually the main reason why, is because it involves wet sanding your concrete. And if any of you guys are familiar with 𝘴𝘔𝗡𝗚, you know that it contains a high amount of airborne crystalline silica. Crystalline silica that becomes airborne when it's in the dust form, like when you're pouring your concrete, the dry concrete, or when you are sanding down your vessels. So just like when you do pottery, it's really important to wet sand these so that you protect your lungs. Really won't affect your customers because once the product is solidified, there's no airborne crystalline silica. But like I said, when you're making these, it's really important to protect your lungs. So that involves wearing a mask as well as wet sanding. And I do these in my garage. And so when I'm cleaning up in the garage, I'm also using, I'm not using like vacuums or things where you want to treat this kind of like a pottery studio almost. So all I do to sand these down is just press down on this disc. And I'm not necessarily recommending this method. I've gotten a lot of requests for a video on how I do it. And so I'm more or less just kind of sharing that process with you guys. And at the end of this video, I'll show you how I finish these off and make candles in them as well. For our Rustic Collection Restock, I'm super excited. So part of the challenge with this is the 𝘴𝘔𝗡𝗚 does clog the diamond sanding disc pretty quickly. So I just use a regular soft bristle toothbrush. I got this probably at the dollar store or something, but you want to make sure it's like soft bristle and definitely not one that you use for brushing your teeth. And you just kind of unclog the sandpaper with this. And you have to do this pretty frequently. That's kind of why I said I don't necessarily recommend the method that I use because it's quite a lot of work, but you will be able to get a pretty good result with these using this method as well. So you just kind of get this going and you have to play around with the speed and the pressure. It's very easy to overdo it with these, and I'll show you what happens when you kind of overdo it. Now, one thing, if you're a concrete candle maker, to be absolutely clear on is, and you hopefully already know this, but we're making candles. We're not selling these as pieces of pottery. Now, our customers often will use them afterwards and upcycle them for pencils, makeup brushes, you name it, plants, and that's fantastic. However, these are not fine works of pottery. These are meant to hold a candle. So don't get too fanatic about making sure that they're absolutely perfect. What I aim for when I'm doing this is safety. I don't want my customer to get a laceration when they are picking up their candle or taking it out of the box, for example, because the base is razor sharp. So I am mitigating that with this sanding. I'm not aiming for a pottery-like result. And you can see here at the base how I went a little too deep on that side when I angled it. And so this is something that I probably would discount. I certainly would discount it, but it's still absolutely safe to make a candle in because the walling on these vessels is very thick. If you compare it to your average glass vessel, for example, it's going to be quite a bit thicker. So you do have a good amount of air margin for safety's sake, but definitely do your own testing. I'm just putting that out there. Now, one of the challenges is when you are making these, uh, and what I'd recommend, I made this video probably a couple months back, and what I'd recommend at this point is to use, if you're using this method, to use a sponge rather than continually pouring new water. Because what happens with this pottery wheel in particular is you will end up getting, how do I describe this? Like the bowl, the bowl or basin or whatever you call it, it fills up really quickly and it'll start leaking. And you really don't want that, right? Because there's electrical stuff kind of all around, like at the bottom of this pottery wheel. And so I'd recommend just using a sponge. And then what you'll see me do afterwards with these is taking them in just like a water bath. Now, I made these vessels months before I'm doing this video, but you could pour your concrete and then sand next day, I would say. You may even be able to do it the same day you demold. Now, if you're using the metallic paints, you'll definitely want to let those sit overnight. But my basic process with these is I will make the vessels, and like I said, you could the next day do this sanding or even the same day. It's going to be easier to do the sanding the closer it is to when you made the vessels, just because there's still some water content in the vessels. But then after I sand, that's when I'm gonna let these, so if I've just made the vessels and then I go ahead and sand them, after that, I'm gonna let these sit for about a week for mine personally. You wanna let all the water evaporate, and I find that 24 hours is not quite enough time to do that. But you can always check by weighing your vessel every day, and when it stops losing weight is when you know your vessel is fully cured and ready to be sealed. So at that point, I would seal them. And you're gonna see later on in this video, actually, I'll link above a video on how I seal my concrete vessels, actually from a few years back, but I use the same exact process today. But I'm gonna include in this video another step that I don't think I really covered in that video, or if I did, I've changed my process on it. So I'm gonna include that, and that's kind of how I finish off the outside of them. With these metallic vessels, I do like to apply a varnish to the outside of the vessel. And that is because a lot of our customers use them as planters. The kind of more basic nude ones with the metallics specifically, I've found our customers, at least from the photos they've shared, like to use as planters. And so for that, the varnish just makes them a little bit more water resistant, I would say. Without the varnish, they're going to behave more like a terracotta pot and be pretty porous, which is absolutely fine, but they're just going to be a little more durable with the varnish, and I actually like the look of it too. With the metallics, the varnish kind of finishes it off a little bit because it fills in sometimes where there's little bits of dips in the vessel from the metallic paint. So another thing I want to mention, like I said earlier, I don't necessarily recommend the method that I'm using. This is just kind of what I've evolved to that's worked sort of the best out of the stuff I've tried for me personally, because I make quite a lot of these at a time, and it has helped me to streamline my process a little bit. But I would say, and I may make a video on this as well, definitely leave me a comment below if you'd like to see a video on this method. But the other method that I'd recommend, if you don't want to invest, because this is going to cost you probably $120 for the pottery wheel and another $50 or $60 for the sanding disc. Let's just say $200 of materials for this method. If you don't want to invest that right now, the easier way, well, I don't want to say easier, but the other way that I've used, it's a little simpler and definitely less expensive, would be to get one of those sanding blocks and then wet that. And this method I find is easiest to do like over a bucket, and I'm happy to make a video. I definitely use this method as well, especially if I just have a couple that I'm gonna do. But if I'm gonna do like more than 20, I definitely pull out my pottery wheel. And you can see the result from this is pretty good. You can get a pretty flat bottom from this as well, because a lot of the time you're pressing straight down onto a surface that's already flat. But I do tell our customers that these are not food safe. I have had people ask me that. Hey, Alan, can I put these in the dishwasher, or can I, even use like the larger bowls for my dog? And usually I'll say no to that, just because it's really hard to say. And I would beg to say that, when potters are making things food safe, there's a lot of different products that they may use to seal them, and they put them through a kiln and everything. So I'm just comfortable with saying that they're used for decorative purposes. But you could definitely put a plant, cotton balls, all that stuff, paint brushes, makeup brushes. We've had customers do all kinds of things like that, and they look really cool, especially with the varnish you're about to see. The next step here is I will get a bucket, just with water in it. I don't necessarily use distilled water for this. You absolutely can. I don't notice a big difference if you do or not. And I just kind of run them through the water if there's a lot of excess that needs to kind of come off from the base, because when you're sanding them down, you definitely get a little bit of excess there that the water just cleans up. Now, something like this, if I've made these vessels, let's say months ago, and I'm doing them in the water like this, the vessels themselves, I find, are ready within 24 hours. It's when you make them initially and they're still curing that when they get wet, that it takes, a lot longer. For me, about 7 days. I hope that didn't probably sounded more confusing than it was helpful. Point is when you make your vessels initially is when I find that they need about 7 days to cure. For me personally, you definitely want to test, because it depends on humidity, the amount of water you're using, a lot of factors there. So yeah, I just kind of run these through the water, and then I let them usually just cure, and I let them usually just dry out on a rack. I have like a metal rack. You could use anything. If you do this in your house, you're going to want to put like a paper towel or something underneath it, because they will kind of drip water a little bit at first. But this just kind of gets that excess off the bottom of the vessels, so that way it doesn't dry and kind of look gross, like crusted concrete or something on the side of your vessel. The other thing I do with these that you'll see later on the video is I use little silicone bumpers on the base, just because even after all this work we've done sanding and making these as smooth as possible, concrete, just the medium itself, tends to be a little bit abrasive. And so I find that putting the silicone bumpers, and you could also use like I've seen people use like the cork ones as well, but using something like that is going to make the product, in my opinion, just really finished and polished, and it just gives it a nice feel when you go to set that on your counter. Because like I said, the concrete is gonna tend to be a more abrasive material even when it's fully sanded. So yeah, I'm so happy with the results of these. Each one is so unique, you guys. This is the varnish that I use. It's from Earth Safe Finishes. It's just a matte varnish. I have used the satin one as well, and I don't notice any major differences, but I do kind of prefer the matte one. It's just a little bit more of a flat kind of matte finish. There's a little bit of sheen to it. It's more than a flat, but it's like it's labeled kind of more of a matte finish, and I like the result of this. Now I go horizontally, just a real light coat around the outside, just a single coat, and then I'll do a couple vertical stripes just because I like that kind of canvasy look where the pattern's going kind of horizontally and then intermittently vertically. That's just the look I like. That's definitely not the right way or the wrong way to do it. As long as you coat the vessel, you're pretty good. And I don't see a need to do the very base of the vessel. I don't see any differences really in the result and usability of the product when you do the very base. Now, you absolutely need to seal the base on the inside. And I've already done that with Earth Safe Finishes Preserver/Sealer. You could do it in either way. And I've also used Earth Safe Finishes Preserver/Sealer to apply this sort of gloss, to apply this sort of varnish on the outside as well. The purpose is just to make it a little more water resistant on the outside. And like I mentioned earlier, I just kind of like the final look of this varnish on the outside as opposed to the total matte look, because it makes it look more polished and finished, in my opinion. It's very subjective, and you're definitely not wrong or doing something unsafe by not sealing the outside of these vessels. As long as you seal the inside, and I would recommend 2 coats uh, of, I use the Earth Safe Finishes preserver slash sealer, and that I've never once had a concrete vessel leak on me. In all the, I would say, thousands that I've made at this point, I have yet to have one vessel ever leak on me. And that is the only product that I've used to seal the inside and that I really swear by for these. And I also like it just from an eco standpoint that it's non-toxic, there's no VOCs, there's no heavy metals, it's made in the US. There's just a lot of benefits there. I'm not sponsored, I'm not affiliated with them. Nancy, the owner of Earth Safe Finishes, doesn't even know that I'm making this video. So I just like their products. And I just use like a little foam brush. I'll try to link these ones below, but the best price on them I found is on Amazon. You can get a big pack of them really inexpensively. And what I do is I will put my brush inside a little plastic bag just so that way I'm able to keep reusing the brush several times for the same process. And it just makes things a little bit more eco-friendly. I like to minimize stuff that I am throwing in the trash for environmental reasons. But I haven't found anything better than these foam brushes for application of the sealer or the varnish. Now, the way that I like to market these is, so I guess at a farmer's market, let me talk about a couple different areas where I've sold these. So at farmers markets, I will generally just have the candles out, and well, people can just pick up whatever they want, and they can smell them. And sometimes, like with the tins, I'll have testers available so that they can not open every single candle, you know what I mean? But I'll have some that are open as testers. Now, for the concrete candles, because I don't use lids on these, I keep all of them open, and they can just pick them up and smell them. They can choose exactly which one they want. But when these are being sold on the website or online in any capacity, what I will do is have different pictures, like of, so say I'm selling my pink lilac and willow candle. I will have on that platform different pictures of examples of the variation that they could get. And definitely I'll show them the exact colors of the metallic paint that I'll be using in that candle and the shade of the concrete from the titanium dioxide, which is a little bit lighter than the typical cement all. But I'll tell them that the variation is going to be, you could get any sort of variation of this basically, and I'll have several different samples. So they can't choose exactly what vessel they're getting. It's sort of like a little bit of a mystery, but they know what the colors are gonna be, and they know, of course, what the fragrance is gonna be, and the type of wax and all that stuff. So I hope that that kind of helps a little bit, because sometimes, I've never had this happen personally, but I have heard of people where they've sold like the metallics specifically, or even when you mix 2 different color swirls, and just had customers a little bit frustrated that, my candle didn't look exactly like the picture. It's important with products like this to emphasize the uniqueness of each individual product, and that adds to the experience that your customer gets. It does not take away from it, because think about it. This is not a product that they could walk into Home Goods or Bath and Body Works and buy whatsoever. This is something that you created right down to the vessel. I mean, look at how gorgeous these are. Each one is a unique personality, but they all fit into the same family. So your customers aren't going to be, totally caught off guard, if that makes sense. But it's such an experience for them, and it's exciting because they don't know exactly what they're going to be getting. So there's the element of mystery as well. But I'm just saying to prepare your customers for that online by showing them some examples of the different types of variation that they may get. And these are the little silicone feet that I use, and I'll link these below. I just get them on Amazon. They're very inexpensive, and sometimes you can even catch a sale. And then the warning labels that I use, I do print myself, and these ones I've done with my laser printer on the cardstock craft paper. If you guys would like a tutorial on how I design my warning labels and what info I put on there, as someone in the US, then definitely leave me a comment below. Now, for the wick sustaining devices, I actually make these myself out of popsicle sticks. You can see I'm using just a belt loop puncher, and I'll have this guy linked below. Pretty inexpensive, and this allows you to place your wicks exactly where you want. Now, I've done this so many times with these particular vessels that I'm not using a ruler because I can see where I want the wicks on here. But I definitely started out measuring the spacing exactly where I wanted it with a ruler. And I actually triple punch these because I use the same ones for the vessels that you see off to the right, the triple wicks that I get from Amazon and those particular concrete molds. So anyways, just a really nice way. You definitely can go with, I know there's some companies that you can buy devices from. I know 1617 had some that some people have used in these vessels, and they definitely work for some of these vessels, but this is a really inexpensive way to get your wicks exactly where you want them on the vessel, and I found that it works pretty well. So I'm just measuring out my fragrances here. This is the 𝘴𝘶𝘱 oil that I was telling you all about. They actually renamed it, but the formula, according to 𝘴𝘶𝘱, is unchanged. So I'll have this particular fragrance linked below for you guys. It's such a powerful hot throw. If you're looking for, I would caution you though, because this fragrance is pretty polarizing. I have customers that absolutely go crazy over it, and customers that just kind of hate it. It smells so much like you're in a field and there's wildflowers, and you get that kind of infused herbal essence feel. It's definitely, so if you like Roman chamomile and you like the really herbaceous fragrances, like I'm a Taurus, okay, you guys, so I like fragrances that are pretty much like sticking my head into an herb garden. Not heady florals, but really earthy herbal florals. Anyways, that's what that 𝘴𝘶𝘱 fragrance is to me. This next one is what I use for our oatmeal, milk, and honey candle. And this is an oil I get from Nature's Garden. It's their oatmeal, milk, and honey fragrance. By the way, all these formulas will be available in my Patreon in a convenient PDF so that you're able to use them for your own business if you would like. This next oil here is the Malevolent Mrs. Heatherleaf. You can get this from, I think Maple Street has it, Deep South, Hive and Honey, the 1617 oil. I'm crazy about this fragrance. I've never sold it yet in a candle. I've been testing it for the last like 4 months. I'll have the best formulation that I've found with it, again, available in my Patreon. I go crazy for this fragrance, you guys. It smells like you're in a really expensive hotel. And I don't know, I'm thinking of names for it. So if you're familiar with this oil, what would you name it? This next one here is a blend that I use of Candle Science Bayberry, Cypress and Bayberry, along with Flaming Candle, Bayberry, and Silver Oak. And I actually call this one Bayberry and Silver Oak. Again, the exact blend that I've formulated will be available to my patrons, but it's a blend of those two oils, and I am just using the piston funnel to get these into the concrete vessels. Another thing about the varnish that really helps, because you have that extra layer of a seal on the outside, if you do spill a little bit, you have, I don't want to say a little bit of a barrier there, but you kind of do. Your vessel isn't necessarily shot like it would be if you put nothing on the outside. But these piston funnels work really well to avoid and minimize spilling entirely. So that's what I'd recommend, but even if you do spill a little bit, it's going to be more forgiving with that varnish on the outside. Alright guys, so I am back at Menards. Found one of my scales was being very inaccurate, so I'm actually going to be using my taller scale, but that involved me needing to make a taller stand for my 𝗬𝗎𝗪𝗏. So I'm about to go attempt to build that. Alright guys, second time ever using the table saw. I apparently left my pencil all the way at the other end of this shed when I first came in here. I'm not going to be able to film too much of this because I don't have a tripod and I don't even think I'm supposed to be filming. Well, I'm at Menards. You guys who have been here for a while will know that I did this a couple years back when I made my first 𝗬𝗎𝗪𝗏 stand. You pay like 12 bucks for a piece of wood and you can cut it for free, but at your own risk. So just to show you guys, you basically just put the wood down, you mark where you want to cut, and then you release this safety gauge up here, and then it'll cut through it, and then you just flip the wood, do the same thing on the other side. This stand that I use is about 14 inches long. So then what I do is I flip the board over and I mark the same thing on both sides. And then I just line this up and I pull the blade down to kind of make sure I'm right where I want. And then I can't show this because I gotta hold this part with my left hand, but then I pull this gauge, the safety gauge, and then I pull the saw down and then it cuts through it, and then I flip it over and do the same thing because it won't, the saw blade isn't wide enough to cut through the whole board in one sweep. So I just used a piece of wood that was laying around to make this a little easier for me to gauge where I was gonna cut. So that's what the very first cut looks like. And then flip the board over and do the rest of it. So definitely not perfect, but you guys can see the 3 on the bottom was what I started with. And I was trying to extend this up by like 5 more. So what was actually happening, just to give you guys a little bit of backstory here, I was pouring my oatmeal milk and honey candles, and I realized that after I poured them, because I know what my fill is on these containers, and I've worked with this wax a lot, I know the density, I know, the fragrance I'm using and everything. I was ending up with like 5 extra ounces of wax, which isn't really a crazy amount. Like, it would probably take these down to about 8.5% fragrance load, then 9%. But what was happening was the scale was like deducting weight as I was putting in the wax. And I don't know if you guys have ever encountered this with the 𝘧𝘧𝘐𝑡𝑦 scale. I've used that scale quite a lot, but I have noticed that they can, after a few months, get a little bit finicky. And I'm kind of about done with them at this point because I had to basically toss 5 candles because I'm not comfortable selling the candles like that, just because that's not how I've tested the formulation. So anyways, I'll have the scale that I'm using linked below, and I've never had any issues with the scale, but I've been hesitant to recommend it because it is a more expensive scale. But I can tell you guys that it just works a lot better, and I've never had one issue with it. I still do use like some insulation. I use like a little, one of those little coasters, oven coasters or baking pads. Pot holders, I think is what they're actually called. But I still use that just to keep the scale from getting really hot, but I've never noticed any issues. So anyways, just wanted to put that out there. If you guys have noticed that you're ending up with extra wax, it could be that your scale is like deducting weight as the wax is going into the pouring pitcher that you're weighing the scale on. And you could just mark on your pouring pitcher where you want to stop if you always do the same batches every time. That's another way to get around it, but this is the method I've chosen. So these are the candles the next day, and I absolutely love this wax. It's very easy to wick and to get a nice smooth finish on. Now it does have a little bit of dipping, and you will see that on these candles, and so I do go ahead and heat gun them. And I'm also going to be using these dust covers that I made. These are actually made from wildflower seed paper. The paper itself is handcrafted in part of Asia by a women-owned company, and then it's infused with wildflower seeds. So my idea was that people could plant the seeds in the candles after they have finished their candle and grow a little plant of their own. I think for me, this collection being that it is the counterpart to my Wanderlust collection and has such a focus on simplicity, nature, that rural, picturesque atmosphere, that's kind of the feel that I wanted. I wanted something handcrafted right down to the vessel, and where the vessel itself was repurposable in a way like this, where you could actually plant a little flower in the vessel after your candle's finished. Another reason why I like to seal the outside of the vessels as well. So anyways, just going over these with a heat gun. And by the way, these candles will all be available on our website, 𝘴𝘗𝗚𝗏 beginning tomorrow, which is May 31st, which is a Friday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. That is 11 Central, 10 Mountain, 9 Pacific. And there's very limited quantities of each. As you guys know, if you make these, they take a lot of time. And so I'm not able to do a big restock, but you guys can also see on some of these wicks, I have a tendency to cut one wick shorter than the other. And so I have to go back through actually and fix these a little bit. A couple of them that you can see the right side is a little bit longer than the left. And you all know I'm slightly I don't like to say OCD, but you all kind of know what that associates with. I'm a little fanatic about things like that. But yeah, definitely check these out on the website if you are interested. Earthbow.com. I'll try to link it below. And I'm so excited to finally have this collection restocked. It has taken me so long to get these made and finished the way I like them. And once again, I'd like to thank 𝘴𝘶𝘲 for sponsoring today's video. Oh, if you guys want a label tutorial for these as well, let me know. I do actually use labels that are removable, is what the word I was thinking of. So all these labels, the paper is super easy to just peel right off. And the purpose of that is so they don't leave any film or residue on these vessels and people are able to easily repurpose their vessels. But anyways, if you did enjoy this one, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I'm sending all of you peace, love, and light, and I'm wishing all of you happy candle making. I would like to take the time to thank my patrons for their incredible support. A massive shout out goes to Wendy, Nicole Rott, Nancy with All About Me Beauty Bar, Merle, Brad with Neon City Scents, Michelle, Paula, Zahara with Crystalline Candle Co., Julie with Belux Candle Co., Jennifer with Bea Essentials, Selena with Banbury Street Creations, Sue, Nick, Bruce, Flavia, Jennifer with Bittersweet Candle Co., Danielle, Anitra with Ninth and Maxwell, Matthew, Jindy, Lisa, Elizabeth, Carol, Cheryl with Soap Spice Cheryl, Maya, Losa, Luzdari, Daichi, John with Past Sense Candles, Angela, Amber, Bluegrass Bath and Candle Co., Marketer with The Beat Institute, Allie, Carla, Todd with Cold Creek Candle Co., Krista, SS, Karen with River Birch Soaps, Kina with Kijoli, Angela, Amanda, Denise with Grumblegeist Candle Co., She's More, Cindy, Kim, Teresa, Frida, Shiromi, J Creative P, Colette, Nicole, Stella, Leanne, Martha, Angela, Jamie, Chadwick, Z, Mabel, Arev, Bobby, Jamie, Amy with Candle Emporium, Stephanie, Honey, Terry, Maria, Genevieve, Gracie, Yolanda, Tonya, Susan, Irene, Rolanda with Mason Marzette, Megan, Melissa, Ursulette with Ursulette's Beauty Secrets, Kelly, TCM with Ava Bryceco, Lois, Tia, Victoria with The Sacred Prayer, Valerie, Stacy with Firewick with Me, Belinda, Rhonda, Smadar, Duchess Luxury Creations, Juliet, Carla, Crystal with Indigo Scents Candle Co., Anika, Kim with Kimberly's Candle Co., Kim, Angelic, Tia, Chris, Miss S, Shakira, Tiffany, Kim, BN, Lizette, Chandra, Pat, Chickadee Company, Tara, Indigo, SJ, Gina, Emily, Sandra, Heidi, Sunday, Michelle, Lisa, Angela, Kelly, Angela, Natalie with Walter's Wicks, Sherry, Cynthia, Denise, Sonia, Natasha, Aziza's Closet, Edward, Shambliss Candles and Soaps, Sabina, Raphael with Alondra's Candle Co., Desi, Kim, Abby Lane Candle Co., Christina, Tommy with Rose and Crown Soap, Tara, Joy, Katie, Diane, Kelly, Judith, Sherry, Diane, Courtney with 17 December's Candle Co., Stacy, Yvette, Teresa with All About Serenity, Janetta, Monica, Nick,
Tim, Diane with Todafor, Anne with Sweet Annie's Natural Skincare, Jennifer with Honey's House Handcrafted, Michelle, Maria, Sarah, Alex, Roslyn with Hers and Hers Candle Co., Susan, Shaylee, Iya, Christopher, Louv, Brianna with Be Home Dispensary, Megan, Victoria, Ash, Nicole, Virginia, Kathy, Melania, Susie, Aaron, Regina with Adobe Rose Botanicals, Scott, Dana with MJ's Candle Creations, Leah, Stacy, Donna, Jennifer with The Clean Theory Candle Co., Maria, Mary, Zoe, Amber, Brandy, Peppa, Phil, Georgiana with Tropic Candle, and Gazelle with Bozypha. Your support is deeply appreciated.